Today's daf is daf Sayin, and we're up to Li Olam. Gemara says Li Olam dinogach Torah didan l'Torah dehegdish. So a shor shel hejot was nogeach a shor shel hegdish, and Rabbi Akiva learned from a Kal V'chomer that he can collect from hegdish the demei nezek from karka idis. Udika kashalach. And if you'll ask the question, and we derive from that if a shoshal hejot was no gerech a shoshal hejot, he's potter. No. That's not true according to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is Savrallah Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, and Rav Shimon ben Manasseh rejected this drasha, and he says that a shoshal hejot is chayav when he's no gerech a shoshal hegdesh. He's going to be chayav nezek shalom even on the first negicha. Tisanya, we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh Omer shoshal hegdish shenoga shoshal hejot potur. So when the pasuk says shari ehu v'lo shal hegdish, it's talking about the shar mazik, and the shar mazik, if it's a shari ehu is chayav, but if it's a shoshal hegdish that was mazik, then you are potur. However, the opposite, shoshal hejot shenoga shoshal hegdish, is bein tam, bein muad, mishali, nezek shalom. In all situations, you pay nezek shalom, even on the first negicha. So the Gemara says, hachi, if this be the case, that Rabbi Akiva holds that, like Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, the mazik hegdesh is chayev, and he pays nezek shalom, is if so, then Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva, why do you assume that the machlokas between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva was about karka idus of the nizak, which is equal to the karka ziburis of the mazik, and the machlokas is whether or not he has to pay according to the idus of the nizak or according to the mazik? Maybe there was never a debate about this. And we always do the shuma according to the nizak. So what is the machlokas? And the machlokas here between Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, between Rav Shmuel and Rav Akiva, is about Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh. Rabbi Akiva savak Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, and the mazik hegdish is chayev nezek shalom on the first negicha. Rabbi Shmuel, he only mentioned nizkei hejot, Sovak Rabbanon, that mazik hegdesh is potter. So the Gemara rejects this on three counts. Number one, Imkain, what did Rabbi Akiva mean when he said lo ba hakosav? The implication of lo ba hakosav is that the pasuk didn't say like Rabbi Shmuel, but rather said something different. Now, if they're not arguing at all about the din of mazik hegdesh, if they're only arguing about the din of mazik hegdesh, then when it says meitav sadeu, that's talking about nizgei hejot, and there's no machlokas about nizgei hejot. The whole machlokas about nizgei hegdesh, and the pasuk of meitav sadeu is not talking about nizgei hegdesh. Furthermore, my kal v'chomer lehegdesh. What was Rabbi Akiva's kal v'chomer? Which seems to imply that he's coming to be machmir in the case of hegdesh. But here you're saying, according to Rabbi Akiva, he's moded to Rabbi Shmuel, that as a general rule, we do the shuma of idis according to the nizak's idis. So therefore, we are being mekil on the mazik. Because as we said before, the idis of the nizak is equal to the ziburis of the mazik. So we're being mekil on the mazik. So how could it possibly be that we're learning a kal v'chomer from hegdesh, that we want to be mekil on hegdesh, that a hegdesh should be mishalim l'fi idish shel nizak? Rabbi Akiva is machmer on hegdesh. He's saying that even a short tam is going to pay nezek shalom. And furthermore, third kasha, Omar Rav Ashi, Tanya Beheja, we learned to the price explicitly regarding the pasuk of meitav in Mishpat, meitav sadeu, meitav karma yishalim, meitav sadeu shal nizak. Umeitav Karmel Shel Nizak to Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva Umeitav Sadeh Shel Mazik, Umeitav Karmel Shel Mazik. So we see explicitly that the machlokas here is about tashlumin of a shor hedjot. Does he pay according to the meitav of the mazik or the meitav of the nizak? There's no debate over here about shor shel hedjot shenogach, shor shel hegdish. Now the Gemara continues to address the discussion about the chiyuv tashlumin of meitav. Rami le Abai le Rava. Now Abai is going to ask a kasha, which we're going to spend most of today's daf trying to answer this kasha. There seems to be a stira. Ksiv, as far as the payment of the nezek, meitav sadeh, meitav karim yishalem. And the implication is meitav in, midachridi lo, you have to pay meitav. You're not rashoy to pay anything but meitav. For Tanya, we have a brisa, and the brisa darshans a different part of the pasuk. The pasuk says, Yoshiv, Baal habor yishalem kesem yoshiv lebailov. And the word yoshiv is redundant. It already says yishalem. So what's yoshiv? L'rabos shava kesef afilu subin. So a man could give the entire bag, this is the mazik, of psolas chitin, and it's worth something on the market, and he's going to use that as a medium of payment to compensate the nizak for the loss of the hezek. But we see that he can pay with something garua, something low down, like subin, psolas of chitin. How do you reconcile that with meitav? And the Gemara answers lo kasha, kan midaito v'kan bal korcha. So the first answer of the Gemara is that it depends whether the mazik is willing to come forward and without even going to Bezdin, he's willing to pay on his own initiative without denying that he was responsible for the nezek. That's called midaito. And if it's midaito, then we give him a certain hakala, we make it a little easier for him, and we allow him to pay with yoshiv l'rabos afilu subin. However, if the nizak has no recourse to collect from the mazik other than to go to Bezdin, and therefore the nizak goes through the whole hassle of judiciary process, then we're going to be more machmer on the mazik, and he's going to have to pay meitav. He's not going to get away with subin. And the Gemara tries to support this distinction until Abai rejects it. Omar Ula Breder of Eloi, Deker Nami, the pasuk itself is Meduya, Dichsiv Yishalem. So when it says Yishalem, it's implying that he's forced to be Mishalem. Bal Karcho. And that means that Bezdin has to get involved in order to force the mazik to pay compensation to the nizak. And in that case, it says Meitav Yishalem. And Abai rejects. Omale Abai says to Ula, Miksiv, does it say Yishulam? Yishulam means that through the power of some other authority, he will have to pay, which means Bezdin being Mechayefim. Alo Yishalem Ksiv, Midai Tomash. Yishalem means from his own initiative. Ela Amar Abai says we have to find a different and alternative reconciliation of these two psukim, Meitav versus Subin or Shavah Kesef. Kidemar. It's going to be based on Rabbah, who interprets the following brisa, the Sanya. The brisa is talking about matnas aniyim. We know that an ani is someone who has in his assets less than 200 zuz. His total assets dip below 200 zuz. What about someone who technically is an ashir? He comes to collect matnas aniyim because he can't sell his real estate. And if he would sell his real estate under pressure, he's going to take a loss of perhaps 50% of the value of the real estate. So the real estate is worth 200 zuz. If he's forced to sell it now in order to put bread on the table, he's going to end up selling it at 100 zuz, half price. Therefore, machilin also be meiser oni ad mechza. We can feed him from meiser oni. His status is that of an oni because in terms of liquid assets, he has no money. And in terms of real estate assets, which are sellable at this point at 100 zuz, he's still an ani. So we'll make up the difference, the increment between 100 zuz and 200 zuz, and we'll afford him with Meiser Ani to the tune of 100 zuz. V'havi Beimar, and Rabbi had a kasha on this brisa. Hechi Domi, what's exactly the case? If the entire market price was depreciated, so anybody who would sell karka, he's going to sell it at 50% of its price, at a slash price, at afilu tuva nami lisfile. Then, according to his real assets, he's only worth 100 zuz. And if he's worth 100 zuz, then you don't stop at 100 and give him only 100, but rather, who the Mishnah says in Peyat Perches that Mishieshlo Masayim Zuz Pachos dinar, so he's only got 199 dinrim. Yachol Litol Afilu Elef Zuz V'Masachas. There's no limitation into how much money he could collect from Meiser Ani. We can give him even 1,000 zuz. Does Zol D'Kliyal Manami? Everyone's karka is depreciated on the market, and if that be the case, he's an ani. He doesn't have Masayim Zuz, because the value of the karka for everybody is only Mea Zuz. Ella, but rather we have to assume the Okir Arata de Kliyama. Everyone's karka is at a high price. V'didei, but he's got a problem. Why? Because whenever you're running around looking for a buyer and you put something on the market and it seems like you're desperate to find a buyer, then Aidi di Al V'nofak Azuzi Zol Are. A person who wants to buy, he's going to squeeze the mocher down to a much cheaper price. He knows psychologically that the mocher will sell at any price. Like, for example, you have a closing sale, right? So everything must go. And they slash the price by 50% because they're desperate to get a buyer. So technically, this man is an ashir because he has assets that are on the market for anybody else would bring in 200 zuz. So it's yotza v'chlal ani, and he's an ashir. But since he's running around looking for, he puts an ad in every single rag, every single paper that he's selling his karka, people are going to bargain him down to 50%. And we don't know exactly how to define his status. Is he an ani? Or is he an ashir?